Side.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. So just to say, this is the third of our four events working in conjunction in partnership with the London Borough of Barnet, taking place just after, because the election kind of threw timetables all over the place, after Barnet Climate Action Month. And the key rationale for this series of meetings is about raising the profile of community energy through capacity raising events with colleagues in Barnet and residents across the borough. And we know, as I mentioned, more than Barnet residents can, of course, attend, but our focus is really trying to drive further community energy action within the borough. My name again is Said. I'm the chair of Community Energy London. Today we'll be joined, our speakers are as follows. Kieran, would you like to give us a wave? Good to see you again, Kieran. The last time I think was down in Clapham North Library face to face, I think, a while ago. But Kieran Hyland, who's the Senior Workstream Coordinator in the Sustainability Team at London Borough of Barnet. I'll be saying, Alan, are you wanting to say a few words? We didn't allocate you a slot here, but you're very welcome to say a few words if you'd like to.
Well, I don't need a whole slot, Si, but just to say, thank you for convening it along with Kieran, and it's great to see Catherine and Claire there from the Railway Terraces. So no, I've just no. So thank you for organising these with Barnet for as part of the Barnet Climate Action Month. And just it's really exciting to hear about all the stuff that is going on with community energy, and I'm just really glad that Barnet could be a part of it, and that we're getting a group going. So thank you. That is my main words. That's
No,
all
no,
right.
that's great, Alan. And I was just saying at the very outset of this meeting, I'm just sending you a briefing on community energy and Great British Energy. So that will be in your inbox
Mm.
probably before the end of the hour, because I think I just have to hit the return button. But as I mentioned, so that was Councillor Alan Scheidemann, who, Alan, you can correct me, you are the cabinet leader in the London Borough of Barnet for climate and environmental issues. Is that right?
Yes, indeed. Sorry, I should have said I
No, no,
am.
that's
Thank you.
fine.
So
Wonderful, Alan. That's really great. I'll say a few words after Kieran on behalf of our colleagues at Community Energy Barnet, who unfortunately could not make it here today. Then we're delighted to have here Catherine Andrews and Claire Lister from, deep breath, the Cricklewood Railway Terraces Energy Group. Catherine, Claire, it was a delight talking to you on Wednesday. Thank you for making time here today to talk about your potential retrofit project in the west of the borough. And then the main time of this meeting is taken up. We're delighted to have Ben Owen, who's a director of Home Energy Action Lab, HEAL, who is a member of Community Energy London, and he'll be talking about some of the work and opportunities that HEAL are involved in terms of retrofit and some of the opportunities around retrofit and community energy that could be applied more widely across London, and we can reflect on that within the context of Barnet. Please feel free to drop in questions or raise hands. I'll keep a view of hands raising as we go through. So don't feel you have to wait to the end of any particular presentation. I'll bring people in, but also drop comments in chat. If you want to connect up with other people in Barnet, feel free to put your details in the chat column, and either Catherine or other colleagues will take note of that, and we can carry on a conversation post event. If that's all okay, I should say that, as I mentioned, this is the third of four. The first two online meetings, Catherine will drop a link in the chat column. They're available recorded. The first of which was an introduction to community energy, which took place last Friday. And then on Tuesday, we had an introduction to community energy solar projects. Okay, I'm talking a bit too much, but let's see if I can whip through these slides, and we'll bring on other speakers, particularly Ben, who's our main speaker for today. Next slide, please, Catherine. So we are a network of around about 45 groups across the capital. We formed in 2017. We're represented, or its members represented in virtually every borough in London. Not so great in some parts of East and West and also Southwest London, but we are increasing the number of groups and representation of community groups who want to deliver community energy projects on a number of buildings across the capital. We've grown in terms of numbers of both members from around about 15 in 2017 to the 45 or so we have now. and also the number of projects, which were around about 100 projects in 2017 to something like 250 odd projects now. And there are a number of factors of why community energy has particularly prospered in London, which I'll reflect upon on these slides here. Slide, please, Catherine. What do we do? An awful lot of what we do is try to represent a single voice for the sector by liaising with key stakeholders and decision makers across the city, councillors, local authority officers, London councils, also the Greater London Authority. We are motivated to come together because in 2016 the government stopped very prematurely a programme called the Urban Community Energy Fund that provided capital and feasibility funding for projects in city areas. That was a real disappointment. And what we did was we talked to the then brand new incoming mayor, Sadiq Khan, and asked about whether or not he could replace that with a London-based scheme. And luckily, we persuaded him to bring forward the London Community Energy Fund. We have regular meetings. Amazingly, we've had about 10 monthly meetings a year on the last Thursday of every month since 2017. So I can't quite remember how many that is, but it's been a lot. And just to say they're well attended. The key thing we're trying to do is share best practice and knowledge, but also bring forward views from the sectors that we can influence policymakers, both at the local authority, regional and national level. Slide, please, Catherine. We've got a whole bunch of outputs that we've developed over the last few years, from a peer mentoring project map, a 10 steps guide, which is something we went over last Friday, guides about how to set up a local authority community energy fund, which increasing numbers of councils have used to set up community energy funds, including, as Ben will know, Hackney, who this week announced funding of around about £400,000 for 35 projects across the borough. And I believe Heel did particularly well out of that funding round, Ben, if I'm right, along with a number of other groups. We produce some project guides in terms of different technologies. If I do say so myself, some bloody great videos as well. And we're always interested in groups who would like some funding themselves to produce a video. We are really one part-time coordinator, Catherine gives a wave, who's again hosting most of this event, and a super active board of directors, which includes Dave Powis, who works alongside Ben as part of Heel. Slide, please, Catherine. London's ecosystem for community energy, just to mention that I mentioned earlier on the London Community Energy Fund, we've now had 7 rounds of the Community Energy Fund. That's brought forward £2.4 million of funding for feasibility, pre-feasibility and capital funding for projects. We've seen out of that over 200 projects supported. On the back of that mayoral initiative, we've talked to increasing numbers of boroughs to bring forward community energy funds. And now we have ones in Islington, Camden, Hounslow, Lewisham, Haringey, Hackney, and Southwark is just about to, I think they've launched theirs, but they've not actually launched the actual list of projects that have been supported as yet. So if you look across those boroughs and the schemes, we're talking around about £6 to £8 million of funding has come through from boroughs over the last 4 years on top of the Mayor's Fund. And that's particularly the reason why we managed to really grow the sector in the capital over the last 4 to 5 years. Thanks, Catherine. Next slide. I've kind of said this before, but we're seeing an increasing number of projects. We're seeing groups pivot away sometimes from solar to look at other different technology areas, from LED to insulation projects, energy advice, broader retrofit. We're seeing, luckily, new funders coming forward to support groups. And I should say, for every £1 of feasibility funding the Mayor has given for those projects that have gone ahead, we've seen typically £5 to £7 raised by groups in terms of capital funding from community share offers. So, Alan, just one thing to remember, the community, Barnet residents in this particular instance, can be a great resource to actually fund projects, green projects across the borough. So something to remember. The interesting thing is we're seeing the groups grow. I'm also the chair of Repowering London. When I started as chair, they had around about 4 FTE. Now they've got about 25 full-time people working there. And as a consequence, they're doing bigger and bolder projects. And they're working, as it says there, with more businesses. from the energy sector who want kind of really experienced partners within the community to help them roll out energy efficiency and retrofit program. We're also seeing new operators and partners and organisations from schools, academies, broader schools, the faith sector, places of worship come through to want to talk to community energy groups to deliver projects. Slide, please, Catherine. We also developed a really innovative potential map, which took data from the GLA, and we have identified 12,000 community buildings across London, and we have the energy characteristics of all 12,000 buildings from something called the London Solar Opportunity Map and the London Building Stock Model and the London Heat Map. So each one of those blobs, and if I get time, we'll do a little bit of driving of the map online. But if you go to communityenergy.london, you can see the potential map. And what we've identified in Barnet, as you can see from here, is there are 574 community buildings. If you realise the solar potential, and this number is a bit toppy, but if you realise the solar potential across those 574 buildings, that would realise 53 megawatts. Each one of those clusters of buildings, when you click on it, it zooms in and it will identify the specific building, and it will give you everything, including a link to the energy performance certificate for that building. We've just published a version 2 of the map, I think early this week or the end of last week, and we'll be further developing this map over the coming months, depending on if we can secure further funding. But just to say, there is no other map like this out there that identifies community buildings, and it was really by working in close collaboration with the data team at the GLA that we managed to develop it. Catherine, slide, please. I won't dwell upon this, but just to say, in the House of Commons last March 2023, we launched a plan for realising the full ambition for community energy across the city, with an aim to quintuple, as was then, the number of projects to 1,000 by the end of this decade. It's now a quarter. Sounds an awful lot, but it's 33 projects per borough, really, or sorry, 30 projects per borough. And we've already got some boroughs with 10 to 15 projects already in them. So we think we can manage that. And in fact, we think we can probably exceed it by the end of this decade. Catherine, slide, please. When we were giving our webinar last week, the Secretary of State was standing up in the House of Commons saying that GB Energy, which has been in the news again, excuse me, just today, GB Energy will oversee the biggest expansion of community energy in British history through the local power plan. Just to say, the local power plan will deliver £600 million in grants to local authorities, £400 million in loans to community energy groups, yet to be have any detail, but that's per year. So people like Ben, you've got £400 million per year to try and find out how to spend. So that's an interesting problem to have. I won't dwell upon this, but yesterday, the Great British Energy Founding Statement was published, along as the bill. Those people who are fans of legislation, you can go and look at the bill online, and Alan, the briefing will provide you all of this. That will be with you and your computer very soon. But it says there that Great British Energy will fund and support local authorities and combined authorities and community energy groups to deliver medium and small scale renewable energy projects up to 8 gigawatts of cheaper, cleaner power. I think that's my last slide, Catherine, is that correct? So I think you've got a flavour. There's an awful lot going on. And the thing that I kind of say to many local authority people is there's vast amounts that will go on in your local authority over the coming years, over this period of this decade. And it's very much, I think, the local authority plays a role in shaping how that best works for residents. And so that's why having kind of skin in the game in terms of like shaping the way in which this new investment, these new policies roll out is really important. The previous government singularly failed to think of the way in which local authorities could play a role in this. And it's great to see that the new government has put local authorities at the heart of Great British Energy going forward. Catherine, back to your slide set, please, because I think I'm going to hand over to Kieran. Kieran.
Lovely. Thanks, Saeed. And yes, great to see you again. And hi, everyone. So I'm Kieran Hyland, and I work in Barnet Council sustainability team, particularly on the energy efficiency and retrofitting side of the programme. I'm really delighted to be here today along such a great lineup of speakers, and actually to see such good turnout for these events as well. from a very personal level, one of the first events which really stood out to me when I first joined Barnet Sustainability team a few years ago now was actually a community energy-led London run event. And that was really showcasing the incredible work obviously being done by the organisation, partners, and obviously communities at the heart to deliver and grow community energy across London. And so to now be in a position in such a short space of time to actually start having these conversations and a series of presentations today in relation to opportunities around potential community energy projects in Barnet, particularly nurtured by the work being undertaken locally by Community Energy Barnet, is something which I'm so excited to see taking place and really starting to flourish. And something obviously as well that the council is so pleased to support. I'll keep this very brief now because I think Yogita and Anna have done very similar updates so far already. And I know there's some really interesting presentations coming up over the next hour, which I can't wait to learn from. I don't want to take any time away from any of these, but I thought I'd just give a very quick bit of background into the council's interests and work to date in this space. So like many local authorities across the country, Barnet Council have set ambitious climate commitments as part of responding to the climate and biodiversity emergency we declared a few years ago. These include being a net zero as an organisation by 2030 and achieving net zero as a borough by 2042 at the latest. Beneath this, our Sustainability Action Plan contains a number of similarly ambitious targets, not least in the housing and buildings and renewable energy themes, with targets including retrofitting the council's owned housing stock to EPC-B by 2030, which is delivered in partnership with our arm's length management organisation, Barnet Homes, achieving net zero across our non-domestic stock and council buildings, and in the private sector, supporting the retrofit of all homes in Barnet to an average of EPC-C or above by 2035. Away from the retrofit fund, we've also committed to supporting residents, communities, and businesses to access grants and support to make energy use more sustainable and affordable, whilst increasing the uptake of solar power. We're in for a busy few years. We want to be seen as an active climate leader, and while some of these dates may seem a long way off, they really are just around the corner. And it's the actions and behaviours that we start putting in place now that will be decisive in whether we realise these targets to come. However, since setting all of these ambitions just a few short years ago now in the summer of 2022, we've achieved an awful lot in a very short space of time, especially when it comes to reducing our emissions and supporting retrofit and decarbonisation. These include delivering retrofit programmes to council tenants through the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund programme, enabling regionally delivered schemes, including currently through the GLA's Home Upgrade Grant Scheme for private homeowners we're focusing on those resources within the borough, as well as raising awareness around retrofit and energy efficiency by providing clear energy advice on our web pages, and which you can also read information about the council's wider sustainability work, including our progress report and video on everything we've done since 2022, which we published a few short weeks ago now as well. While we've certainly not delivered all of that perfectly, we've learned an awful lot from what we've done so far, and that's been really instrumental in shaping our approach for the future. And as a result, there's a lot of really exciting and innovative things currently taking place in this area, which will start to go live shortly, and we hope will start to make a real difference. Similarly, we know that there's a lot still to learn, but there's such a wide network of really passionate expert individuals, groups, and partners, all in a similar position to us. We'd love to keep working with, sharing experiences, and learning from. It goes without saying that if all of this was straightforward, we'd have done it already, and that there are some huge challenges in delivering these targets, not least the scale of what needs to happen, the costs involved, and the resources available to do it. It also goes without saying that we can't do all of this ourselves, and in the second most populous London borough with around 390,000 residents, the fourth largest by area, which contains around 160,000 homes on top of businesses and the nearly 600 community buildings we've just displayed in the map. We'll only deliver these targets by working closely together with our residents and communities who understand the areas and localities and can bring their own unique insights, lived experiences, and perspectives into shaping how we respond to these issues, which will be the most effective way to measure if what we're doing is successful, if it changes support and suit the local areas. However, while there are so many challenges, there are also so many opportunities related to all of these factors, particularly around community energy, which presents a great chance to bring more clean energy into the borough, helping to reduce our emissions, but also provide cheaper, more affordable electricity. We've seen how successful it's been across London and are keen to support and enable projects here in Barnet. We're working closely with Community Energy London on this and are pleased to be collaborating on this series of workshops, with the fourth event in the series taking place obviously tomorrow, as we'll hear Asai's mentioned as well. We're also funding some of the peer mentoring sessions, which we've also broadly outlined, for emerging community energy groups in Barnet to get access to Community Energy London members and really make the most of their support and expertise. Anyway, that's enough. Probably that's an overview from me as well. So I'll pass back over now. But I'm really pleased again just to see such a great turnout today and for all of the sessions so far. And hope to see you more in the future.
Cheers, Kieran. I know, Barnet, I should say, Alan, it's been a real pleasure working with your colleagues in the sustainability team, from Yogita down to Kieran, Anna, Ellen and Asha. I think I've got them all right there. I think I've done well there. Yeah, but it's been really great to see them, and they've been super helpful in helping coordinate this particular program, and made it very, very easy actually, which has been really great. Next, we're going to hand over to Catherine and Claire to talk about a particular retrofit project opportunity towards the rest of the borough at Cricklewood Railway Terraces. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but it's maybe just me. Over to you, Catherine and Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
there we
sorry. Before that, I should. I'll do that afterwards. You go ahead, and I'll just pick up something. Go ahead.
So we're going to do a double act, and Claire is going to start.
I'm going to start. We call ourselves Terraces on Track, which is a little easier, I think. On track to net zero. We're a little group of climate concerned residents living in the railway terraces right at the western edge of Barnet. This enclave of 200 to 250 houses, depending on which terraces you include, was built in the 1890s for railway workers. They use the standard techniques of the time, and they're well built, but they're very poorly insulated, very energy hungry, largely heated with gas boilers. The terraces are now a conservation area, which brings the usual restrictions on building alterations and a sort of disincentive to install solar, and you have to jump through hoops to put heat pumps in. Our houses are exactly the kind of buildings which the whole country needs to retrofit in order to reduce energy use and meet net zero targets. The current terraces community is very friendly, very involved, very mixed socially, culturally, and economically. We have homeowners, mortgagees, private renters, and shared ownership.
Yeah, stay there. Thank you, Catherine.
There's a strong and
my finger slipped.
We'll tell you when we want you to move on. Thank you.
We've got a strong and very active residents association, and they hold regular events for residents, and they support joint community initiatives. Catherine's going to tell you why we exist, how we started.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Lovely. So, as Claire said, we're a small bunch of kind of active and probably slightly more motivated residents who started connecting with each other when we spotted various things that were going on in our houses, like solar panels going up or people putting in extra glazing. And so we formed together very informally to inspire each other, to encourage each other to do something more, do something extra, to share our knowledge, not just with ourselves, but actually to share our knowledge with our neighbours in the community we live in, and to generally raise awareness of the possibilities that people think, actually, this is something I could think about for me. This isn't beyond my interest or my ability. It's possible here and now. And we've called it a wildly ambitious vision. We have an ambition that shared clean energy for our whole community is possible. Some of us have taken steps and celebrate that. And we're very conscious of the limitations that many of our neighbours face in terms of budget or the constraints of the housing stock. But our ambition is that we move through and beyond that. The layout of the buildings, you can see the tiny little drawing at the top of our slide here. It's a network of houses with shared lawns. It's a perfect shape for things like ground source heat pumps, for example. So we have that ambition. We hold it. Obviously, we can't impose on our neighbours, but that's what we'd like to draw them towards. So what we have done what we've achieved, or what we've tried so far, is, as Claire said, we have a very active residents association, and we are present there. We go there, we talk about these issues, we make sure that we're a consistent voice. We've created a very simple guide to the path towards net zero for ourselves, not just about saving money on energy, but about the thermal comfort. And it has in it real case studies of the houses that people here live in, so that there's a real example of what your neighbour has done that you can learn from or be inspired by. We have a regular community newsletter we call the Cottage Jottings, and we write articles in that to just, again, keep the temperature up, to let people know about what we're doing, to excite them about the possibilities. We had a stall at our summer fair. So Catherine, can you move the slide on? Last year. Thank you. There you are. There's our stall. And we used that to talk about what we were inspired to do, but also to get more sign up. So our little group is about 6, and we've got a further 20 who are neighbours who are really interested, keen, want to do things that we can draw in different ways now. So we're expanding out our influence, our energy. And following getting that group of wider residents, we held an open meeting in the autumn last year at one of the slightly larger houses. Most of our houses are tiny, so that's an issue for us, but one of that larger houses where a bunch of new people came along, and we invited an expert in retrofit who has worked with one of the properties here to come and answer questions and talk about the practicalities and inform, share knowledge. And it was a really positive meeting. And the hosts, who live in a bigger house, as we said, have signed up to host what they see as kind of energy salons periodically to keep that energy that going. We did submit a bid. So Catherine, can you move to the next slide? To the BarNet Net Zero programme last year, which we were very disappointed not to get anywhere near funding. And it was to try and build on our initial case studies to create a feasibility study of 3 very typical terrace houses that would inform residents, whether they're here already or whether they're newcomers, about what they can do. And we still want to do that. And the retrofit company that we're going to do it are still standing by, ready to do it when we want to. We've also joined Community Energy London and starting to benefit from your great knowledge and networks, and yeah, just the energy that there is there. And as a result of attending a meeting recently, we linked up with something called Rossendale Community Energy, which is a very, very exciting project, working with a set of terraced houses in Rossendale that are pretty much identical to ours, and they've got a huge ambition and a very exciting agenda, and we're dying to see if we can step in their footsteps, really. So that's what we've achieved and tried. And now very quickly, just to take you on to what we want to do or make happen. We do want to copy something like this. You probably all know it. I picked this one up from another community energy organisation. To add to, we have a welcome pack already that we give to new neighbours, but we want something like this that we can give to our neighbours. It doesn't have to be a hard copy, it can be a link, but we want to create something that they have that makes their lives really simple to start the retrofit journey. And part of that is also we want them to have, or we want all of us to have, access to resources and information, a directory of retrofit experts, businesses, and proactive advice for residents who are thinking about this, to kind of smooth some of the huge obstacles that we've all found, all of us have found in the terraces when we've been trying to take action on our own properties. We want Barnet, putting our demands out here, we want Barnet to be really thinking about the link between the developments that are going on and community energy. So we are adjacent to a big site where B&Q is currently located and it's been sold. There's a big development coming, And we think that is such an opportunity for community energy, and we want to be plugged into that. We want that to be part of what the developer needs to look at and think about. And as I've already mentioned, we've got the layout that potentially makes ground source heat pumps possible in our neighbourhood. But we're not I mean, this is a very techie group. We are not at all. We are local residents, and we're aware. We have a vision. We know there's more, and we'd like to partner with people who have got that technical knowledge.
But if a new development, a really big new development, and there are lots going on around here, could actually take in, when they're doing their planning, the fact that if they're putting ground source heat pumps in with a capability for more energy, that they can share it with the local communities.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there are developments like this going on all over Barnet and London,
yeah,
that have that potential.
I mean, to be honest with you, we're going to live through probably 10 years of construction and noise and disruption and dirt and dust. So it's a little bit of a compensation for,
Yes.
for that.
Yeah.
So we also would like some lovely, clear guidance. As Claire mentioned, we're in a conservation area. People who have installed solar panels have done it anxiously because they haven't understood the requirements in terms of permissions, if not, or if they're needed or not, or as you know, the challenges around locating air source heat pumps in tiny little backyards, for example. So some good guidance, some clear guidance about what's possible and what's needed. And one of our neighbours had to and Alan knows this because we've shared it, had to personally kind of engage with a lot of unnecessary pushback when trying to locate their air source heat pump. We'd also like, this is nearly at the end of our list now, we'd also like Barnet to be thinking about joining things like LARA, the local authority retrofit association, where there's long-term funding for retrofits and, you know, exemplar projects, and potentially, you know, the payback for organizations and individuals or communities going carbon net zero. And then finally, I guess, you know, and to sum it all up, we're excited that there's a Barnet Community Energy Forum, and we want to be part of that, and we would love the support and encouragement and connections that will bring into bigger sources of resource and funding and advice into the longer term.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, Claire and Catherine, and I'm sure Ben might reflect on this as well through some of the work that Hill's doing, there are increasing numbers of communities that we're seeing that are contacting Community Energy London around looking at similar initiatives such as yourself, and they're having mixed kind of success with their local authority. But I mean, it's a growing demand that we're seeing, and they're
Yes.
doing exactly what local authorities ideally want, which is having, rather than an individual coming, groups of individuals, an identified location coming through saying, we have multiple homes in an area that we'd like to you know, look to retrofit.
Yes.
There was a question, Alex.
And just quickly, before we
yeah.
go, there's a final slide that is now on everyone's screens, just to say to you, this is just a very small sample of some of the things that we've done. So, and Barnet have installed 10 electric vehicle charging points. Well done. There are now 4 properties in the terraces with solar PV.
Panels, yeah.
And the picture on the right is actually a house that got rid of the gas completely. So they are fossil fuel free. And it's kind of before and after picture, but it's a triumph as well. So just a little taste of, the progress so far. Thank you. End of the slide. Thank you, Catherine.
That's really great. I mean, and you know, I think the thing is, there's probably very many communities and streets across Barnet that, if they knew about what you were doing, I think it would galvanise them to look to do something very, very similar. And so, the way in which we can hopefully make some steps to support you and your group, it could be a really good, you know, kind of like case study for how we do it elsewhere in the borough.
We're up for that.
Yeah.
Great. There was a hand raised by Alex, and if we can answer Alex's question, we'll go straight over to Ben. Alex, did you want to come in with something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask quickly, Catherine, what are the main barriers that you faced when you discussed about implementing
Okay,
these
so
measures?
I think, yeah, lovely, thank you. We've mentioned a few of them. So knowledge, confusion about planning requirements or otherwise. So residents have thought, I've got to get planning consent for my solar panel. I've got to get planning consent for my air source heat pump, and they don't know what they do. Luckily, my husband's an architect and has been able to, give that advice or do the research. But most people don't know.
Yeah, when I took advantage of the mayor's initiative a few years ago to have a discount on solar panels, and I and another resident both picked that up and wanted to install solar panels. I was asked to pay money to make an application to see if the solar panels were okay or not, and I just thought, no, I'm not paying money for this because I know they're okay nationally. You are allowed to have solar panels, but within the conservation area, it's very unclear. It says you've got to maintain the roof line. You can't put anything on the roof. It's just there are contradictions. There are old ways of thinking which are interfering with progress.
But another really crucial one is when our gas boiler broke down, because we were part of this group, we were confident that we knew how to research an alternative to gas. But actually people don't.
No.
The gas industry does not want to encourage an alternative. And there is very little understanding of what would work for properties of a particular size, or the how to do it piece, the resources, the expertise, or the contractors. It's just not visible. And so people don't want to take that step. They don't want to be uncomfortable while they wait for unknown technologies to arrive and be uncertain about whether they're going to be comfortable through the hot weather or the cold weather. So there's just too much. It's too far away. It's too hard for people to touch and to reach at the moment.
I think, Ben, these are lots of messages you must be terrifically familiar with. Catherine and Claire, thank you very much. Please don't go away. We'll be bringing you back again. But let me just switch quickly to Ben to give his thoughts on his experience through HEAL and just to reflect on some of the things you've said, because I'm sure they're very common to things you've heard before. Ben, go ahead.
Yes, hi everybody. My name's Ben Owen. I'm a retrofit coordinator. Primarily I work with EcoFurb, which is a London-wide scheme about retrofit advice, and trying to link what you're really saying there, Catherine and Claire, was really interesting from my professional work, in terms of trying to work with individual homeowners to try and take them through that retrofit journey in some way, that kind of that knowledge gap that's missing, and trying to fill that and provide as much advice that we can at the early stages. And also provide confidence to go forward. So that's what I do in my day job. I work with EcoFurb, and I get paid by retrofit work. So that's what I mostly do. But in my kind of spare time, like today, I work with HEAL, which is Home Energy Action Lab. And that's, again, really links into what Catherine and Claire were just saying about the groups of residents coming together and trying to empower them into... Sorry, Catherine, do you want to move on a couple of slides? Yeah, that one. Perfect, thanks. Yeah, great. And so that's what we're trying to do at HEAL, is to try and empower community groups to come together, whether in the similar kind of houses, like you might have the railway terraces, or if there are kind of multiple different types of houses within the same sort of street or same area, and provide them with the kind of knowledge that they might need or looking for. Or like you said, like right now we can't put you in touch with contractors. I can do that through my EcoFurb work, but that's because we're part of a cooperative of contractors. But that's one side. But through HEAL, we're trying to bring communities together and empower the communities to take forward their own retrofit advice, and not that, just also help each other through the journey as well, because there will be similar conversations between, like you said, can we do solar panels, and if one person's already got solar panels on, hopefully that's a precedent for the future homes to get solar panels with either confidence or with no hassle from kind of local planning authorities. So our mission generally, is we're basically architects and building professionals, and we're trying to help people through a retrofit journey, ideally as a community rather than individual homes. So obviously have a more comfortable home, reduce the cost of running at home, and then obviously reduce the kind of emissions related to the home that people are interested in. Do you want to move to the next slide, Catherine? Yeah. How are we doing this? Generally, we're kind of doing events like this. We are through working with Community Energy London. We've done some retrofit reports for some community buildings, most recently in Clapton, in Hackney, and also in Shoreditch. So we've been working with the community, small community groups, to trying to provide, again, early upfront advice about how they can reduce their heat demand, so reduce the energy required to heat the building, and then maybe potentially also look at energy renewables to try and produce energy as well. We also do a lot of events like this and some kind of in-person events, and generally we're trying to raise awareness and be kind of advocates for retrofit as much as possible. Do you want to move to the next slide? Thanks. Right, yeah. So each home is slightly different. The picture on the left here shows a kind of typical where heat is lost within the home, and you can see obviously the roof being 25% of the energy lost, or the heat energy lost within the home, and that's not really much of a surprise because obviously the heat generally rises, and that's obviously where loft insulation. If there's no loft insulation, you put loft insulation in the home, you'll get a huge savings from that. Heat energy point of view, but then obviously the impact on the bills. Walls also generally the largest surface area in the home, and so therefore you will see a large amount of heat lost through the walls, and therefore that's why insulating those elements can also make a big impact in your home. And then kind of we just shift our attention to the picture on the right, which is a series of pie charts, which I've just made up, but what it's supposed to identify or represent in some way is the railway terraces in some way. You've got similar houses, but each one is slightly different, whether they've been how they've been adapted over time, how the occupants have used it, levels of insulation, but also how often they heat it, how long they heat it for, what temperature, and each one will have kind of its own energy demand. Even if the homes are relatively similar, you will find that there are differences within the kind of general energy makeup and where heat is lost, whether it's more through the windows because they've got single glazing, or if it's through the loft because there's no loft insulation there, or maybe they heat their home to 23 degrees in the winter, and therefore the boiler has to work a lot harder to kind of increase the temperature, and there's more consumption of gas. So that's what that's kind of trying to represent, and so that's why my day job working with EcoFurb, it's much more individual homes. However, with HEAL, we are trying to apply, some knowledge and say, okay, well, internal water insulation is the right use for you, and also because you've got similar building typologies, it's also useful for your neighbours as well. Next slide. Okay, yeah, so what is retrofit? We keep talking about retrofit, and it's generally, it's applying, insulation, installing new materials such as insulation and systems, such as solar panels or air source heat pumps, or even smart meters, or TRVs, which is thermostatic radiator valves on your radiators, to reduce the energy consumption in the home. So on the two pictures on the left here, you can see a home before and after external wall insulation. So you can see this is also an opportunity to kind of maybe modernise the building in some way, but also look at, generally when we do reports, we're kind of looking at the moisture in the building as well, and that's very important, whether there is issues with damp in the home, mold or condensation, all those things. And if we have to generally, if we insulate, we're also ventilating as well. And then the two pictures on the right hand side is internal wall insulation. So it's looking at applying internal wall insulation. So on the external wall, applying some insulation on the inside of the home, and then obviously having a plastered finish. There are technical reasons why one's better than the other, but there are also reasons why one is better than the other. For example, again, with the railway terraces, not being able to, because you don't want to change the appearance of the external appearance of the building, so you might go, okay, well, internally, insulation is probably the best way of reducing the heat loss through the walls. Happy to take loads of questions later on, and hopefully we'll have enough time. I'll just run through the last ones just in case there are any questions. Next slide, please, Catherine. So we have already talked about the benefits of retrofitting homes. Obviously, the ones I've circled here, reduced energy bills, reduced energy consumption, but it also improved internal air quality. So one of the things we're looking for is, obviously, when I talked about the damp and mold and condensation, is to try to solve those issues at the same time and just bring the general internal temperature up to a more comfortable level. Widely, wider scope of things, obviously, we've got massive issues with carbon emissions on a global and national levels. So obviously reducing the energy consumption in the home is one way of trying to do climate change mitigation. Generally, I think it's about 30% of the energy used on a national level is consumed in the homes, and so therefore obviously reducing that much demand as much as possible as well. There are obviously wider benefits from a health and safety point of view. The NHS often publish figures on money spent within the NHS on illnesses that could be reduced or eliminated through a better internal air quality or internal environment in the home. Next slide, please, Catherine. So return on investment. Obviously, we talked about energy and consumption, and obviously reducing energy consumption to reduce the bills. And a lot of the time installing energy efficient modular homes is not as cost effective from purely financial point of view. You will save money on your bills by wrapping your home with external wall insulation, but the payback, the money saved on the annual bills is likely to take 20, possibly even longer, 20 years, possibly even longer. And that's on the assumption that the energy prices don't go up. If they go up, then obviously you probably save back quicker. That's not to say, there aren't any changes that you can make to your home that can be financially cost effective, from a payback within 5 to 7 or 8 years. Cavity wall insulation is a great one in terms of it's a low cost measure. It's also low disruption. So that's one of the reasons why it's low cost. But it does, like I said, that think of that house again with 35% of the heat loss through the walls. Cavity wall insulation deals with that much, much quicker and cost effectively. So cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, I already mentioned, and even solar panels on your home, they often provide a 7 to 8 years. I'm sure Saeed and the team there will have a better idea of that. So there is, but we need to think about it from a non-cost effective point, really. And I believe we need to kind of start thinking about our homes. We don't install a new kitchen, think of the cost, the return on investment of a new kitchen, or if we buy a new car, we don't think of the return on investment on that. We need to start thinking about retrofitting the same way, rather than what is the return on investment on energy efficiency measures. Let's think about the improvement of internal air quality, the thermal comfort in the home, and that long-term benefit from a carbon emissions point of view, and all that kind of stuff. Yes, the picture at the top there actually is a picture of my own home. I put internal wall insulation on that wall there, and I was trying to think. Actually, the big benefit, apart from the room is now much warmer, what we've really managed to do, and it's not talked about a lot, is reduce the road noise. We've got a fairly busy road outside, and actually the road noise has massively improved. The noise from the road is massively reduced since installing that, the new windows and internal wall insulation. So it's a much nicer room to sleep in now, without the kind of sirens and all that kind of road noise going off. Next slide, please, Catherine. So typical retrofit journey. is, you know, identify your motivations, and then understand the buildings. The next thing. Sounds like the railway terraces have been really good at getting somebody in. I'm going to assume it's Julian Williams because I know he's kind of been around there. And so the retrofit assessment is a kind of thing now. So you'll have someone come to your home, a retrofit assessor. So then they'll do an assessment and look at the building fabric. So that's the external elements of the room, of the home, sorry. Look at those, what it's made of, you know, how the inhabitants feel in the home, and they'll often do a ventilation assessment. And then there's a few other little things like risk assessment, but that's for grant-based work we can come to in a minute. And then that kind of assessment gets taken to someone like myself, a retrofit coordinator. He writes what they call a whole house plan or a whole house retrofit plan, which basically says, you know, here you are now, and you often get a EPC kind of rating, that A to G rating, and say, okay, here you are, here your home is now. What elements could be improved and how can we improve them? And if you do this, 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 and this, we can improve your home from, say, an energy EPC rating of an E to a C, and your carbon emissions will go down, and your bills will go down, and your comfort material goes up. So then that retrofit coordinator, you know, looks at, you know, information, try and find some contractors for you, or if they work close with the contractors, you know, we do work with contractors, but that's not always the case. You know, some people want to bring in their own contractor, which is fine, but as long as a contractor's willing to work with the retrofit coordinator and understand it, because retrofitting a home can be more technically complicated than your standard conventional builders are usually willing to deal with. And so finding the right builder, which is what I think Catherine and Claire were alluding to earlier, is actually can be quite tricky. You do need someone with a bit of experience, or at least not experience, but a willingness to learn, because it's usually an extra couple of steps. I realize I'm running out of time, so I'll just quickly move on to the next slide, Catherine. There is help out there. People like, you know, across the bottom there, you know, People Power Retrofit in Manchester, EcoFurb in London, Cozy Homes in Oxfordshire, services which provide you with that whole house plan, that early kind of retrofit assessment, retrofit whole house plan, and then hopefully links to contractors to do the work. So there are people there are other organisations out there, you know, Energy Saving Trust. The Heating Hub is a good one. That really, they're kind of like really focused on boilers and combination boilers, combi gas boilers, and reducing the heat demand and improving the efficiency of those. So there are things out there. Next slide, Catherine. What can you do now? Yeah, so again, it sounds like the railway terrace is a good example of this. They've done a lot of the early work, you know, finding a bit more about their home, looking at smart meters, looking at the things that they can change relatively easy. Grants, you know, there's the boiler upgrade scheme, which really focuses on air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps and biomass boilers. There's a GBIS, which is the Great British Insulation Scheme, and the ECO, which is Energy Company Obligations kind of grants-based schemes, which are looking at the fabric elements. So often it's external, internal wall insulation, loft insulation, things like that. So there is pots of money out there, and it does sound like there's hopefully more coming on the way. MCS, which is a micro generation accreditation scheme, and Trustmark are two kind of industry bodies which provide a framework for contractors to sign up to and to adhere to their standards, and are a good place to start when looking for contractors. Or if you found contractors, make sure that they're either Trustmark or MCS certified. And then usually often find friends and family is still a good way of finding the right contractors. You need that kind of personal experience and feedback from them. I'll for a bit longer because I know I'm running out of time, but any questions? I'm happy to hear for like the next 10-15 minutes if people want to.
Cheers, Ben. We'll probably go a little bit over time, but I'd be grateful if you can hang on, because I'm sure that kind of conversation will about that. Your presentation will have stimulated some questions. There's a couple of technical ones in the chat column if you want to look at those for a second, but just to highlight to Alan. Yeah, Alan, I was going to highlight some things to you, but you go ahead and ask your questions, and Ben can somehow manage a technical question and your one as well. Alan,
well, no,
ahead.
happy for you to highlight some things to me, side. I was just going to say, unfortunately, I do need to shoot off, so just wanted to.
I will
say,
highlight them whilst you go ahead.
really great session. I look forward to coming along to Muswell Hill tomorrow. It was particularly good to hear from Catherine and Claire, as that happens to be. Railway Terraces are in my ward, and happy to see what we can do. This was speaking to them about how we can help to promote that more. But I know, and Kieran know, that we're looking at, aren't we, improving what we've put on the website about retrofitting and the advice where you'll be able to look at individual details for your property. So we are keen to do a lot more. But it was, yeah, sorry, Syed, was there anything you wanted to?
And Alan, actually, rather than myself letting you know, let me just introduce very quickly Michael Levitsky, who's here from Community Energy Barnet. Michael, do you want to say a quick few words, and we'll go back to the broader discussion about retrofit as well, just whilst Alan here. If you just want to give us an update on what Community Energy Barnet is, Michael. And you're on mute, Michael.
There's like clunkiness. We've been running around and I'm on my phone. Sarah couldn't be here. I'm one of the group working with Sarah. And there's several of us who got together. It was Sarah who took the initiative, where people who are obviously very concerned about the climate and the role of energy plays in achieving net zero with various skills, energy, finance, academic skills, communications, technical, and so on. Some of us just bring enthusiasm to it. We're at the early stages still, but we've made quite a bit of progress in the last 3 months, really, that we've been working on this. The aims currently have been to identify a project that we can actually move forward here, hopefully more than one, in Barnet, to use local contacts, which is proving is working. Basically to work also with the council and with local stakeholders. We're very pleased with the support we've had from the council. I'd like to thank the council group. Sarah's been the one who's mainly done the coordination with the council, but thank you, Councillor Schneiderman, and those from the council who've called into this excellent session. So where are we? Very briefly, we've identified a short list of sites, mainly schools, some leisure centres. Focus with working on that with the council and focusing on sites that the council has a degree of control and leverage over. We're carrying out a feasibility study on 3 schools for solar panel projects. We're working closely with Repowering London, which works with community energy groups throughout London. They've been very helpful to us. They've helped us to source the grants to do the feasibility studies. A major catalyst to what we're doing and accelerated things is that Syed, who's the luminary of these matters on this call as well, lives just down the road from us. So we have an unfair advantage, I think, in getting going. Currently, we're focusing on the rather mundane but crucial task of setting up the Community Benefit Society, which is the legal structure within which a community energy group has to work in order to carry out projects and finances. We're focusing in to find our first project to fund. We'll then work with Repowering London and others to raise funds and to get into raising some funds from the community as well. We're trying to get more people involved in the area, which was successful. We're finding a lot of individuals expressing interest to us. We already have a website. We are also very pleased to find groups like Railway Terraces in the area. We're finding there are small groups who've been interested in this kind of work for some time. And Barnet being quite a big borough, we hope we can be something of a focus for all these groups and cooperate with them and help to coordinate. So I'll close that now, very brief call. As I say, I'm on the phone. I'm not very good at working Zoom on the phone. It's bad enough on a computer. And Syed, I'll hand it back to you.
Michael, thank you very much. And you've done admirably well on the phone. Alan, I think you wanted a quick comment back, but we'll go back to Ben.
Yeah, no, sorry, I just need to shoot off, but thank you very much. And thanks to hear, really interested to hear from that, Michael. I think the Community Engine Barnet project that you're working on with Sarah is real, and supported by Kieran and all the sustainability teams. Really exciting, and I'm really pleased that that's managed to get off the ground in Barnet, and look forward to it.
I'll just say one thing,
going
Alan.
great guns in the future.
We have to go as well. We have to go as well. So thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you all.
I will just say one thing, Alan, before you go, is there are a scarily number of very talented people in Barnet. So if the council goes out the message that you want to harness residents' input, I think you will get some really excellent skills and individuals.
I've written that down. It's a great quote, but there are a scarily number of talented people, including everybody on this call. But thank you. Take care, everyone.
Cheers, Alan.
Bye.
And thank you, Claire and Catherine. Ben, I'm going to hand you over to this one about mechanical ventilation heat recovery, which is a good point, because when you do have almost passive house standards, MVHR, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, the MVHR is obviously a bit of kit. It's retrofitting it into homes can be tricky. I think you said an air tightness of 2.5. You could start thinking about MVHR at that kind of point, really. Which is, for those who don't know it, it's a kind of centralized ventilation system, like a big kind of fan, effectively. What it's doing is it's drawing air in and it's mixing it with it's also taking heat out of the home and mixing the fresh air coming in with the kind of warm, stale air coming out. So what you end up with is warm, fresh air coming in and cold, stale air going out. It's used in quite high energy efficiency buildings, often kind of promoted by a passive house, which is a kind of almost a home which doesn't require any kind of heating system. It uses the occupancy and the sun to heat the home, and it's an incredibly insulated home. When it comes to retrofit, the NFIT is the passive house standard for retrofit. When it comes to retrofitting homes, an MVHR system can be quite tricky to install. They're a fairly big piece of kit, which not to say you can stick it in a loft. It's the ducting and moving that spider around the home and kind of getting the inputs and the outputs in the right places. So it can be used in retrofitting homes, and it can be done. But often, I think Lee mentioned below about continuous extraction. NVHR is a continuous extraction system, but there are other continuous extraction systems that can either sit in the wall, like replace your normal fan. You turn the light on in the bathroom and then the fan turns on, or you can replace them with a continuous extraction, which is always running at a very trickle rate, and then it monitors relative humidity within the room. So if you start boiling potatoes somewhere, or the shower goes on or something like that, the humidity rises, you've got a lot of steam in the room, and the extraction notices that, flicks the switch, and it boosts, and it will go until the relative humidity in the room has gone down to a sensible level. So it's all linked with the air tightness and the ventilation systems, but it's not a kind of you need to do MVHR at 2.5 is what I'm saying.
Can I bring this back to the money question? You mentioned a number of grants. So there's Great British Insulation, which broadly provides money for what we call the able to pay sector.
Yeah.
There's the energy company obligation, which broadly provides funding for those in fuel poor or on various benefits. So those are two bar. Then there's a boiler upgrade scheme, which is, as you quite rightly said, Ben, targeted for those people who want to have a heat pump. And actually, I'm just at my father's house, and my sister's just arrived. She is one of only 10 people in Barnet who've got a boiler upgrade scheme voucher as of May. So in the whole of Barnet, when I looked at the bus stats, there were 10 in Barnet, and she's one of them. So, and I'm going to ask my sister and brother-in-law to actually do a case study, because their heat pump retrofit was quite terrifying, and it wasn't a major extension of their house. It should have been, in many respects, a bit more straightforward because the family weren't there, but it wasn't a trivial exercise at all. And if we want to kind of decarbonize heat, and there are £7,500, I think, for the boiler upgrade scheme, that's a significant amount of money. It should be a hell of a lot easier. So something we need to think about. But yeah, anything on the grants, Ben, in terms of how you've kind of utilized that in terms of your retrofit projects?
Yeah, to be honest, we don't utilize them in many ways. The boiler upgrade scheme is actually handled, from my understanding, or it has been, by the contractors. So from a homeowner's point of view, it's very easy. easy. You know, they just get a quote from the contractor, say £12,500 for a heat pump minus £7,500 for it, and then they're paying 4 or whatever the difference is. So from that boiler, so that shouldn't be a hindrance in any way. It sounds from your sister's point of view, saying it was probably more the actual installation and the design of the heat pump, which was.
Well, just to say, before the last government changed the rules back in about spring. Prior to that, their installer said they'd have to have external wall insulation, so they had to add an extra 8K of EWI to make sure that the maths on the heat pump worked for their particular home. And it's a very typical 3-bedroom, you know, Kieran, the ones which are tens of thousands across the borough. But it proved to be quite a challenge with the EWI as well to add into the equation.
Yeah, as soon as external wall insulation, obviously, once you start sticking on the outside, you've got to start thinking of all the other things that are associated with that in terms of roof overhangs, in terms of how it fits to the windows and how it fits to the floor, you know, and how it meets the neighbours and all that kind of stuff. So it can all of a sudden, like you said, the kind of complication of just installing a heat pump goes up. And I think that's where people are struggling in the sense of, because it needs someone, an independent person to come along and to say, this is the right thing to do. You know, the contractors, what they're doing there is right, and what the, you know, so you're not being had in any way. And it's just that kind of level of confidence, because I can imagine a lot of homeowners, you know, it starts to escalate very quickly.
Listen, we're way over time. I apologise, but since I don't want to keep people too long, but since I've got Kieran and Ben adjacent to one another in the windows, Ben, top 3 things that you can give to Kieran and Barnet as an idea from things that you've worked with various boroughs. How can the borough best help residents in terms of realising their kind of retrofit potential? Any 3 particular ideas that you think will be really good to come down from the council to residents?
Yeah, sure. I think it's providing access to that early advice. We've been working with various boroughs now in terms of providing free or reduced cost whole house plans. So it's those people who are interested could actually access, because, you know, currently we're Ferb at least, sorry, and Ferb now, and there are other companies out there that are doing this, are charging, you know, £500 to £700 for whole house plans, and that in itself is a barrier, you know, for a lot of people, because it's, you know, you've got to have that money up front basically before you even know what you want to do. So that's one thing. Supporting the railway terraces. I mean, that group seems amazing, and I was aware of it because I think they'd contacted Parity Projects, who I'm also kind of got a finger in there, a thumb in their pie, I guess. And then, so I'm aware of that, and I know it's actually quite a good kind of, obviously, a group of people who are, you want to harness that and take it forward and use them as examples to inspire other groups. So supporting those, that in early adopters effectively helps on. Contractors, that's the other big one.
That is the big one, I'm afraid. I mean, you pointed at MCS and I'm sure other organisations, but I think we might just leave it there actually, because the big thing is providing a confident set of installers. So when people come and do some major retrofit to your home, you want to be confident that they're doing the job properly. And I think that's something that local authorities are quite wary in terms of providing a recommended contractor. But if you at least highlight organisations like MCS and REC, Renewable Energy Consumer Code, and other trade bodies that kind of provide that kind of advice, that would be helpful. I apologise, we're 12 minutes over. And it's a Friday afternoon. My brain really atrophies after about midday on Friday afternoon. Now, I will just mention that tomorrow we have the 4th of our 4 events, which is actually an in-person event taking place at Muswell Hill Methodist Church, not in Barnet, but in Haringey. But the local group there, N10 Energy, they work with the place of worship, the Muswell Hill Methodist Church, on doing a retrofit. It takes place at 2:30 to 4 o'clock tomorrow. There will be a tour of some of the interventions they actually undertook in the church. We've got a very busy schedule of speakers again. Councillor Schneiderman in person, Anne Godleman from the London Borough Barnet, which we'll be delighted to see, Sarah Taggart, who's Michael's colleague from Community Energy Barnet, my colleagues from N10 Energy, Kari Jenkinson and Nadia Smith, and our host for the day will be Brian Simpson from the church itself to take us around the site. It leaves me to say thank you to all our speakers today, especially for Ben. Thank you for coming in. So I know you were standing in for your colleague Dave as well. That was really helpful you to do that. For Alan, who's left us, our colleagues from the Crookwood Terraces Group, and to Kieran as well. For Catherine for hosting us today. And this seminar, along with the other two, are the online ones that are all available on our website. And we'll be putting further information up there with the kind of like particular take on Barnet's needs on the website over the couple of months. And Kieran, we look forward to working with you and your colleagues. This was very much a taster series of sessions. It'll be good if we ever wash up after everything to find out how you'd like to see us kind of work with you going forward. With that in mind, Ben, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And to Michael and colleagues, I hope to again see you soon. And we'll call the meeting to a close. And I look forward to catching up with you all very soon. Goodbye there.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.